I traveled to Egypt quite some time ago when I was a young man. I spent some time in Cairo, and then I went by train up the Nile River to Luxor. And Luxor is a very special place. It used to be one of the centers of the ancient Egyptian culture. The Valley of the Kings is there on the west side of the Nile. And many pharaohs from the Middle Kingdom are buried there in that valley, and that are really impressive tombs. And one of the most insignificant pharaohs is Tutankhamun. He's a pharaoh, he died young, and they think he fell off his chariot, and he did that before he could do anything that was significant. However, today he is absolutely famous for the immense riches that he was buried with, and that generations of grave robbers have failed to locate until British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered that grave in the 1920s. And since then, King Tut is a world celebrity. To see all those wonderful things he was buried with in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo is remarkable. To be in his tomb with all the other star-struck tourists, that is even more impressive. And to see the tombs of pharaohs that actually left their mark on history is mind-blowing. They are people who made history in one of the most awe-inspiring cultures this planet has ever seen. Being in Egypt fed the ancient history nerd within me. And it got even more interesting because King Tut's father was the heretic king Akhenaten. And he broke with thousands of years of Egyptian religion because he rejected polytheism and believed in only a single god, Aten, the sun. And he turned Egypt inside out as he tried to force this probably first attempt at monotheism onto Egypt. And he wrote the hymn of light to the glory of his sun god, and parts of that text made it even in the Bible. According to some scholars, his text finds a reflection in Psalm 104. And the Valley of the King is not the only extraordinary place in Luxor. There are ancient monuments everywhere. But something very strange happened to me in the temple complex of Karnak. Karnak is an enormous temple that grew over generations into one of the most impressive sites in Egypt as pharaoh after pharaoh added to the temple complex to make it more glorious and more striking and more inspiring. There was this one place among the ancient columns where I felt that this indeed was holy ground. I could feel God's presence there. It was a spiritual place that transcended reality. And my friends, they felt it too. And none of us were what you would call the religious types. We were profoundly secular Egyptology nerds who wanted to immerse ourselves into ancient ruins with absolutely no spiritual aspirations of any kind whatsoever. Religion for us was the interesting thing of the past, nothing that had any bearing of the present, but there we were. And the realm of the sacred had asserted itself, and it grabbed us, and it took hold of us. And it is the collective experience of humanity that there are places where the presence of God can be felt more profoundly than in other places. These places are usually not just used by one culture, and then they are forgotten. Most of these places continue to be used despite that cultures and times and peoples change. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem is one of those places, holy to all three Abrahamic faiths and to the cultures that came before that. And in the ancient Near East, these sites can include traces of prehistoric religions, followed by Egyptians, Hebrews, Romans, Christians, Muslims, and even New Age people go there to spiritually charge their crystals at the same place. Sacred spaces can be anywhere, among ancient ruins, in caves, on riverbanks, but especially on mountains. Religion speaks to mind and soul and heart. The Spirit of God touches the human heart and drives it to life-transforming action. This personal experience is then recorded and explained and classified and made accessible and relivable to the community through the means of theology and cultic action. The ancient Egyptians carved their experiences into stone, and they left us incredible monuments that even today sometimes can touch your heart. And medieval Western Europeans built enormous cathedrals filled with artworks that reflect sacred experience, and that experience also fills libraries in the attempt to explain the experience. We as humans, we try to grab and preserve these moments of spiritual clarity because these moments often feel fleeting and temporary and somewhat elusive. But because we are beings that were created for community, and that is in our DNA, we have to share those experiences. And sometimes when we remember those experiences, we are afraid that the sacred might be an illusion that the lonely soul conjures up to console itself. But God is not an illusion. God is only incredibly hard to define, because the glory of God cannot be reduced to fit into human terms. Not the stones of Egypt nor the libraries of Europe are able to cast the presence of God into terms that humans can grasp, even though they show us more than just a little glimpse of the truth. We see them and we feel that there is more, so much more, but we do not have the tools to really grasp it. God always defies definition, because God's presence is too vast and too all-encompassing to be completely comprehended. Nothing in our experience is everywhere and always. We deal with things in terms of beginning and end, of alpha and omega, of time flowing steadily from the past to the future. As Paul writes, we know only in part, and we perceive only in part. And that part is the best thing we can hope for, I think. The full glory of God will be revealed to us only when in our last moments we cast aside the bonds that restrain the human existence. However, no one of us wants to rush into that experience. We really like to dwell here on our earth in our somewhat limited existence. Humans are built in this way, and there is no escaping it. We have to live within our means. We are fallible and broken creatures that cannot ascend into the realm of the sacred on their own. We cannot even imagine it fully. We can transcend our limits only for moments that gives us this glimpse of the glory of God. But the rest of the time we have to live through those moments and work through the frustration that we cannot make them permanent, not in Egyptian stone, not in Western art, and not in doctrine and dogma. We treasure these moments when the holiness of God finds us and touches us and transforms us. And on some mountaintops, that holy moment can be more accessible. Those moments of grace see us through our reality, by giving us hope that beyond all the material things lies the union with our Creator. And this union is the trajectory of all human life. So despite being limited and broken and suffering, be of good hope that the string of holy moments that permeates your life is a foretaste of the bliss that is to come. God is always with us, and sometimes we can even recognize that. And then, as the good hamsters that we are, we store those moments in our cheek, and we feast on them when life feels lonely and broken. Amen.